Good morning, world.
Good morning out there. Well, like so many thousands of you out there today who are taking the day off today, we want to talk about why we're celebrating the birthday of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And we'll talk about the man behind so many famous quotes that have just permeated our country's history. I'm Cedric.
And I'm Brian, and this is Cedric and Brian.
Okay, welcome back everyone. And today we want to talk about some of the quotes and look at some clips from the man while we're celebrating this day off. And for some of you, I know it's a day off, but Brian and I want to take some time to talk about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and some of his quotes. And like I said before, we're going to show some clips. But the quote that just faded in when we came back, we want to start off with that. It says, change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability, but comes through continuous struggle. I love that one because, and we're going to talk a little bit later about this, how Dr. King really fought for right and for equality. I think he'd really be embarrassed about today's BLM movement and Antifa, and because the civil rights movement now has become nothing more than a for-profit industry. Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, who we've talked before, or Walter E. Williams has said, are basically just race hustlers and poverty pimps.
Yeah. And what you were just talking about, freedom and the BLM movement, and how we can contrast that is Martin Luther King actually states, and you'll see in our final clip today, how he talks about China and some of these totalitarian governments, even back in the 60s, and contrasts that with, he holds up the Declaration of Independence and strives for what the founders put out there and weren't living up to. Martin Luther King was just calling him out and saying, hey, you need to live up to all men are created equal. Yeah. And that's what he was fighting for. So BLM, being a communist organization, is actually the antithesis of what Martin Luther King was preaching about: individual rights, freedoms that all people should have.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that.
Yeah, what Dr. King basically said, Brian touched on, he said, we just want America to hold up what you wrote down on paper. And what he was alluding to was the Declaration of Independence, where all men are created equal. They've been endowed with certain unalienable rights by their creator, and that's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Yeah. But you want to talk about this quote a little bit?
Is there more to say about it?
No. Basically talks about, it comes through continuous struggle.
Yeah. And people take that out of context. They think they're continuing his struggle when they're actually doing the opposite of what he preached.
Right.
And we'll get into that with his most famous, his most famous quote in a video, but I wanted to point something out because you see a lot of these BLM protests and marches, even if they're peaceful, and maybe it's Antifa getting in on it too, but you see them burning the American flag. Mm-hmm. And if you look at this video here, this is from one of his marches. This could be the Selma one. You can see what they're carrying. They're carrying the American flag because they want to live up to the ideals of what was written when this country was formed. And we all know that we didn't live up to that at the beginning, but it's a continuous struggle, and that's what he's pointing out. That doesn't mean throwing out the baby with the bathwater, which so many people want to do.
Right.
So,
okay.
All right, and here's another quote by Dr. King.
There comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but you must take it because conscience tells him it is right. And I know there's a lot of people on the left that are probably watching this and saying, see, what happened this summer is exactly right. And before we go any further, me and Brian need to say once again that what happened this summer in all the different cities and what happened on Capitol Hill 2 Wednesdays ago, they were both wrong.
Most of us condemn what happened at the Capitol, but a lot of people on the left, they celebrate the rioting and the looting that went on during the summer. So we'll leave it there because we say that all the time.
Right.
We bring it up today because Martin Luther King, and you'll see a quote later where he talks specifically about a quote that's taken out of context.
And you look at some of Dr. King, some of the marches and things like that, they were locked arm in arm, they're walking down the streets, and Dr. King talks at length about, we're going to endure them sicking dogs on us. We're going to endure the high-pressured water hoses, but we're going to do it peacefully. Neither one of those actions this summer, Capitol Hill, were peaceful. So Dr. King talks about that at great length.
And I'm going to contrast that. During the Civil Rights Movement, before there was a black president for 8 years, when there was actual segregation and Jim Crow, Dr. King got something accomplished with a majority, almost 100% white people in politics, right? There were not, I don't know if there were any. I know there was a Republican, was the first senator who was African American. But he did it in a time when you had to get white people to agree with you. These laws all got passed in the 60s. And don't think it's because the white politicians thought it was the right thing to do, because they're politicians. What they did is they needed votes, and they said, this Dr. King, he's resonating with the people, all people. We want to keep our power. We're going to vote these things in. And then they'll go ahead and say, because it's the right thing to do. Well, it was the right thing to do, but it's because Dr. King reached the people, the majority of people, the majority that were white. So for those of you who are still saying we live in a white supremacist, what's the word they use, systemically racist country. Racist. In the 60s, where there was much more segregation, even though they're trying to bring that back now, he reached the people because he was peaceful, he was articulate, and he came from a place of the heart, not as a race hustler or poverty pimp.
Exactly. And to piggyback on what we just talked about, where a lot of things that Dr. King said was taken out of context, and please leave your comments in the comments section, and since we're talking about Dr. King, leave them peacefully and respectfully. We're not trying to engage in argument, we're trying to have intelligent dialogue. One of his best quotes that's taken out of context says, "A riot is the language of the unheard." Now, a lot of people, whether you're far left or far right, will read that and say, see, it's okay to riot. It's okay to be violent. It's okay to be heard. And we heard a lot of people on the left, a lot of politicians say it loud, say it in the streets, have civil unrest.
Now, who says that protests are supposed to be peaceful? Chris
Cuomo. Anyway, what precedes that, and let me read the quote in its full context. He said, "I will always continue to say that riots are socially destructive and self-defeating. A riot is the language of the unheard." Now, I think, and again, we're not picking sides, but I think what we saw in the summer is that there was no agenda, there was no goal in mind. They were just protesting and rioting, because I didn't think there was anything going on in Walmart or Target when the DVRs and big screen TVs were being taken out of those stores. What happened in Capitol Hill? I think a lot of people, and we're not saying the election was stolen or rigged or anything like that. You can do what you want with that. But I think it was a lot of people who said, we are not being heard. Does it make it right? Absolutely not. But Dr. King says it gets to that point when you try and take the proper protocol, you try and go through the court system, you try and do what's right, and when you get unheard, very similar to a 2-year-old who doesn't get the cookie or the juice box that he or she wants, they will throw themselves to the floor, kick their feet, scream, yell, and destroy things.
Yep, so I'm glad you brought that up, because we actually had a comment on one of our videos that was taking that piece of the quote out of context. So we just wanted to address that.
Let me read this quote from Dr. King. It says, "A society that has done something special against the Negro for hundreds of years now must do something special for the Negro." A lot of people read that and say, well, see right there, Dr. King was in favor of affirmative action. Yeah. He's not talking about affirmative action. You got to take it in the context of the time that it was in, because during that time, there was the Jim Crow laws, there was the segregation of schools, riding on the bus, the water fountains, the movie theaters, the redlining in real estate. Black people were not treated equally. So what Dr. King was fighting for, he was saying, and like Brian and I have said so many times, he wanted equal opportunity. Once we get equal opportunity, the outcome will be dependent upon how hard the Negro works, the white man works, the Asian man works. Once they work hard, then the outcome will be what it is. But he was fighting for that. He wasn't fighting for diversity scholarships or having transgender people compete in athletics or anything that gave you an unfair advantage. You can't give one group a special privilege without disadvantaging another group. It just doesn't happen that way. It doesn't work out that way. Okay, one of our other favorite quotes by Dr. King says, "The ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and cruelty by the bad people, but the silence over that by the good people." Ooh, we're seeing that a lot today.
Yeah. So again, a lot of these people will use what's going on today as basically payback. It's the old 2 wrongs don't make a right. Well, they don't believe that 2 wrongs don't make a right. They think that, nope, we need to make a wrong for these people now because of all the wrongs they did for us over the years. But if you grew up in our era, we were taught 2 wrongs don't make a right, and there's a reason for that. Right. Martin Luther King was saying that.
Yes.
And you can't be silent about that. And the problem is that people like us, we're coming to you, and we're thankful for that, is that there are people that we know and watch that are being silenced. As of this filming, Ron Paul, who's just a libertarian, was taken off of Facebook.
Right.
So they are silencing voices. So you can't have that. You have to have an open platform.
Right. And like Brian said, there's a lot of people on the left or on that side who we don't agree with. But should they be silenced? Absolutely not, because how do you have intelligent dialogue? Brian and I were talking about this. We're in the midst of the NFL football season, the playoffs. How silly or how non-competitive would a game be if you just rolled out one football team and they had no one to oppose them? As long as you do it within the rules and the context of the game, and you don't go low, you have to have healthy dialogue so that you guys can do what's best for the entire game, and that's the game that we're all living as Americans.
We say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. And so just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Okay, this end of this video really resonates with me. I made a mistake a couple days ago because, as I told you before, my mom grew up in Alabama, and so she and some of her relatives were right in the mix of that during the civil rights movement. And that is, I think, 3.5 4 hours of my life that I will never get back, because I called my mom the other day and said, "Hey, Mom, remind me of some things." So, long story short, my grandfather's sister actually went to school with Coretta Scott King, so they're really knee deep in that. But here's a man, and if you listen to the tone in his voice, this is a man who I'm pretty sure knew that he was going to face death for the things that he was saying. You can hear his voice quiver, you can hear him shake a little bit, but man, the steelness in his voice, and to say, you know what, I'm going to do this, and I know it's going to mean death, and I know it's going to mean the end of my life, but this is something I believe in wholeheartedly, and I have to stand up for what is right. Sometimes we forget. I went back to that monument, and for those of you who don't know, if you go to that monument in Washington, D.C., the word Reverend is taken off. It just says Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Yeah, the Reverend part is not on there. But as the good Reverend says, he talks about another great leader of our time. It says, "No greater love is this than a man lay down his life for someone else." And I think Dr. King cared so much, not only the black people, he cared for people overall. He says, you know what, if I got to lay down my life for this to happen, so be it, because that was the love and the affection that he had for mankind.
And it's the reason why there's a Martin Luther King Day and there's a Martin Luther King monument, because he did transcend and he spoke to all people. Of course, he was talking to Black Americans at the time. That was what the civil rights was about. Those were the people that were not getting equal access to the law. And that's why you will not see an Al Sharpton or a Jesse Jackson monument, because they are politicians playing to the crowd, wearing their bling, completely different people, and it's sad that they're even mentioned in the same sentence.
Yeah. Race hustlers and poverty pimps.
Yep.
Okay, another great quote that I like is, "We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope." Now here, I'm just going to speak me personally. For those you don't know, I voted for President Trump this year, and that was my hope. And it was disappointment that he didn't win. Regardless of the reasons, regardless of what happened, he didn't win. But what me and Brian are trying to resonate with everybody is that whether you're left or you're right, we all have to work together. It doesn't mean that this country goes down the tube, because if Biden and Harris don't succeed, guess what? We all fail. So unless we all just get in this boat and start rowing together and stop taking shots at each other, this thing is never going to work, and then we're not going to be the world power that people have come to know us as.
Well, we're not going to be the beacon of freedom. People are coming here in droves because they're leaving oppressed societies or communist societies. Now, unlike my optimistic friend Cedric here, I've seen the rollout of what Biden wants to do, and I'm not as optimistic, because if these things get passed, we're still sliding down that slippery slope that was stopped at least for 4 years.
Yeah.
So to get let's get back to the celebration.
Yes.
Martin Luther King.
Happy birthday,
But it's the reason why what he says, we won't stay silent.
Right. This quote goes on to show how Dr. King approached things. He said, "We adopt the means of nonviolence because our end is a community at peace with itself." I can't speak too much on that. It just it hits the nail right on the head.
It speaks for itself.
Yeah, let's accomplish things, but let's do it in a peaceful way.
Martin Luther King preached nonviolence.
Right.
Like Gandhi preached nonviolence.
Yeah.
And
it's weird. I thought it was funny. Me and Brian talked about this. There were a lot of people, and I don't know if I lost friendships completely, but there were a lot of people who ceased to reach out to me during the summer, during the riots. And as soon as things went down on Capitol Hill, I got a call from a few people saying, well, you and Brian talked about the riots a lot, but you're going to leave this alone?
We did talk about it.
We talked about it. We said it was wrong. And we said what happened on Capitol Hill was wrong. But it's funny that I didn't hear from these people during the summer. And the second the riots hit, then they came out and said, "Is this right? And what do you guys feel about this?" It's wrong.
Same things we always said.
No, it's wrong.
Violence is wrong. And all it did is lead to bloodshed, and it didn't help the cause at all. In fact, it hurt the cause.
Yeah.
So
like, when we fight this battle, we have a choice. We can either go the way of people like Gandhi, Mother Teresa, MLK, and Jesus Christ, or we go the way of like a Malcolm X and things like that, and do violence.
Or Stalin, Mao.
Stalin and Mao. It's our choice. We've got to choose wisely. And this is one of my favorite quotes from Dr. King. It says, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy." I think a lot of us are kind of at those crossroads now. Is that when things were going good and we had our way or our candidate won, it was good.
Yeah, but we never had comfort, because everything around us, just basically general media and everything,
right,
was not on our side.
Right. We were attacked a lot. But I think this overall, he's saying that it's easy to do the right thing when things are going your way. Are you going to have that character to continue doing what's right, even when things don't go your way? And hopefully, like Brian said, hopefully the tide will turn eventually and things will work out for the best. I need to develop this skill to say words quickly, anything after that is meaningless. Dr. King says, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." Is it a science thing? I was terrible at science, so this may not go well. Is that you can't? There's no such thing as darkness. There's only an absence of light. So I guess to draw the parallel, you can say there's really no such thing as hate. It's an absence of love. Brian and I, we get a lot of hate in the comments. But like we said earlier,
he gets more hate than I do, only because of the fact that he is a black conservative, and so he gets called all the names. I'm just your typical oppressor white guy in the comments.
Right.
But he actually gets name called.
Yeah.
That's why we did the coon video
Right.
a while back.
Yes, and it takes me a while. There are times, and I've learned from other like great leaders. I've heard the stories about Abraham Lincoln when he would write letters to opposing people and write these scathing letters and then read it and then ball it up and throw it in the fireplace. Yeah. And
more people need to learn how to do that.
Yeah, and because Brian's asked me before, he goes, "Hey, did you see this comment from this person? Did you respond to it?" I said, "I saw it, but I need some time.
Yeah,
I need some time to respond to it."
Or he'll just say, I'm not even going to bother with this one.
Yeah,
because you can just tell it's just about hate, not about education.
Right.
So that's going to lead us to, we can't end an episode about Martin Luther King without his famous speech. So we're gonna play that speech for you right now.
I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
All right. Again, anything that we say about this speech could be superfluous and unnecessary. If you haven't heard this speech, if you heard the speech for the first time, kudos to you.
I bet you that they don't play this part of any of his speeches in school anymore.
Probably not.
Because it's all about the content of your character, not the color of your skin, and that's not what they're teaching now.
Right.
And it's sad. And I know people have used that term, rolling over in their grave, but that's what comes to mind, that Martin Luther King would be rolling over in his grave.
Yeah. Moving forward, again, the inauguration is coming up on the 20th real soon. As we move forward as a country, let's start judging people by the content of their character and not by the color of the skin. At the end of the day, we're all the same. We're all trying to make it on this big round globe that we call Earth, and we're all trying to fight for our families and work hard for our families and do what is right. But at the same time, we're like the proverbial lobsters in the tank that as soon as one gets to the top, another one pulls it back down, and we're not getting anywhere fast. Brian and I have kind of made a pledge to each other that we're supporting the new regime. We have to, because if they fail, we all fail. Whoever's driving this Titanic isn't just the bow of the ship that goes down; the entire ship goes down.
It doesn't mean we're not going to be calling stuff out when we see injustices. Absolutely, and I have a feeling we're not going to be want for content for the next 2 to 4 years.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, we obviously we want it to succeed, but unlike what you see from the Joe Bidens, is they want unity as long as that unity is 100% agreement with what they want. That's not unity. Unity is learning how to get along, compromising. Yeah.
Well said. Well, there's we thought this was going to be a very short video, but you can't talk about Dr. King in just a few short minutes. Take some time out today. If you have young children who go to public indoctrination centers, you guys call them public school, make sure you take some time to sit them down and talk to them about who this man and the impact that he's made in our lives, and find out what he really stood for. And let's stop beating each other up.
And please talk to your children. Those of you who are parents, if you don't know, luckily maybe COVID's been saving your children, but there's articles where math teachers are teaching kids in 3rd grade about critical race theory and about intersectionality. You have to speak with your children, especially our conservative parents out there. Don't think that you're sending them off to school and they're not getting this garbage. You need to sit them down and show them what actual civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King preached, not what BLM preaches.
Exactly. Well, with that being said, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and make sure you ring that bell, and make sure you share this video with everyone you know. And on behalf of me and Brian, happy birthday, Dr. King. Yes. We love you, we appreciate you, and we hopefully everything that you've done will not go to waste. Until next time, I'm Cedric.
And I'm Brian. See you later.